Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to the informational meeting of the House Communications and Technology Committee. Today, we're discussing Generative AI pilot program, and it should be a really great meeting. I'm sorry we got started late. If you could hear us on the recording, thank you. If not, we will pass it out there, and we're working out the technical difficulties. So before I start, I'd like to ask members to introduce themselves. I'll start here on my left.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Joe Diorsi, 47th District, York County.
Representative Nikki Rivera, 96th District from Lancaster County.
Representative Valerie Gatos, 44th District, Allegheny County.
Representative Sean Doherty, 172nd District, Philadelphia County.
Good morning, everyone. State Representative Robert Ledbetter, representing the 109th District, consisting of all of beautiful Columbia County.
Jason, you want?
Representative Jason Ortita. I represent the 46th District in Allegheny and Washington counties.
And I'm Joe Cerisi, represent the 146th District in Montgomery County. So as we all know, AI is an emerging technology that is being integrated in every part of our life every day. And as we look at AI, we're looking at ways that we can use it efficiently and safe. Today we'll be hearing about a pilot program that the governor put in place and how it worked, how it can work to handle our government, how it will work to streamline things and make our life better. This morning's testimony will be given by Harrison McRae, the Director of Emerging Technologies in the Governor's Office. He's going to tell us about how this works, what's going on, and where we go from here. Before we get started, Jason, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure, I'll be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this meeting and this hearing. I think it's going to be very interesting. Over the last couple of years, we've seen AI pretty much in every different avenue of our lives, whether it's in email, school, education, business, chat agents, you name it, it's out there, and it's nice to see that state government is trying to implement this as well. The pilot program seems like it was successful. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about that today, but glad to see that we're getting involved in it, and I hope to see more of it. But looking forward to the comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So Harrison, the floor is yours.
Chairman Cerisi, Chairman Ortita, and members of the House Communications and Technology Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Harrison McRae, Director of Emerging Technologies at the Office of Administration. Prior to joining the Commonwealth, I served as a Govern for America Fellow and was employed as the Strategy and Analytics Lead for the State of Missouri's Division of Personnel. I also spent time working with startups and civic tech organizations after graduating from Stanford University, from which I hold an engineering degree in management science and engineering. This is a discipline focused on working at the intersections of data science, policy, and organizational strategy. What brought me into government was being passionate about empowering people with technology to help best serve their communities and the public. This idea has been at the core of this pilot. In Pennsylvania, we're not just focused on what AI can offer, but understanding when and where AI can be the most appropriate tool to help us solve the challenges we are already facing. In September 2023, Governor Shapiro signed Executive Order 2023-19, expanding and governing the use of generative artificial intelligence technologies within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Central to this initiative was the formation of the Generative AI Governing Board and establishing core values we wanted to embed in this work. One of the first recommendations by the board was to explore how Gen AI could be leveraged by employees, consistent with the values of the executive order. In January 2024, the Shapiro administration announced that OA would lead a first-of-its-kind pilot program of ChatGPT Enterprise to help understand where and how Commonwealth employees could use generative AI tools safely and securely in their daily work. Over the course of a year, a total of 175 employees from 14 agencies used ChatGPT Enterprise to test AI's impact. Throughout the pilot, I talked to our pilot participants about their experience using generative AI. These employees were consistently passionate about the public service work, but often felt they needed an extra set of hands or a tool that could speed up their most time-consuming tasks to be as successful as possible. For many in our pilot, ChatGPT provided the additional support they had been looking for. Some examples that I can provide. An IT project manager who quickly generated solutions to complex software upgrades, saving days of troubleshooting. A policy analyst who condensed hundreds of pages of policy into digestible summaries, freeing time to focus on nuances related to their area of expertise. A developer who used ChatGPT as a debugging partner, rapidly identifying errors or generating cleaner, more efficient code. As many of you know, in recent weeks, the governor announced an initiative to help align federal work experience with Commonwealth job openings. He wanted to create a clearer pathway for recently unemployed federal workers with skills needed in the Commonwealth to fill critical job openings. We were able to deploy ChatGPT to the Commonwealth team assigned to work to help with these openings, and they were able to much more quickly analyze and match these federal skills using ChatGPT. There are countless examples like this from employees who showed how these tools enhance their ability to serve Pennsylvanians. Additionally, during the pilot, we observed despite 48% of our pilot participants having never used ChatGPT, over 85% of them reported positive experiences, highlighting the tool's accessibility and effectiveness across a range of roles. On average, employees saved approximately 95 minutes per day utilizing ChatGPT for various tasks, allowing employees to increase their productivity and focus on more complex tasks. Importantly, the pilot reinforced the notion that generative AI serves as an augmentative tool, enhancing human capabilities rather than replacing them. And Gen AI tools are not a substitute for the judgment experiences that employees bring to their work. Pilot participants reported having to adjust ChatGPT's outputs throughout their use. The most common edits they would have to make were adding their own nuance from their own experience. This underscores the importance of human judgment and expertise in AI-assisted work. I can confidently say that the Commonwealth is better equipped to navigate responsible use of AI after this pilot, and I'm committed to continuing to engage with our workforce in a human-centered way as this technology evolves. AI systems will continue to advance, and by continuing to learn, adapt, and engage employees at every step, we will ensure that generative AI is leveraged safely and responsibly to better serve Pennsylvanians. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that overview of the technology and how it went over. This is definitely a time of change and a way for us to see how this technology can be integrated in all of our lives. And for those of us who are older in the room, this is a new opportunity. I used to say I'm like my parents were with the VCR that blinked, that they couldn't get the lights or the time to go on. I call my son and say, how do you do it? So this emerging technology is all of us to grow with it. So I want to see if anyone has any questions. Representative Dorsey, I know you had one.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Harrison, for your testimony. Just two questions. You had mentioned in your testimony the Generative AI Governing Board. Who sits on that board, and what are your goals?
Yeah, so the board is a internal board. It is a mix of representatives from the governor's office, the Office of Administration, and a handful of other select agencies, and their primary responsibility is to provide oversight to any potential AI use cases, implementations, and helping with our overall path forward as we navigate this technology.
So just to clarify, though, all of the members of the board are in the executive branch?
Yes.
Okay. Second question here, and final question. You had mentioned in your testimony that AI is a tool that can and will enhance but not replace Commonwealth employees. Obviously, it's becoming more capable every day, these AI tools. So my question is the administration open to using AI tools in the future to reduce redundancies? And as it evolves, would you be open to making things more efficient and, I don't know if the word's replace, but displace redundant positions?
Thank you for that question. And, you know, one thing I said in my testimony is not just focused on what AI can do, but where can it help solve the problems that we are facing? And one thing that was a clear focus of this pilot was where we can help generative AI be an additive force to our employees. A key value in our executive order that we signed that kicked off all this work was employee empowerment. And we've been focused on how we can have these tools really augment our employees' capabilities for specific, opportunities to reduce redundancies, I would look to those teams to see if they think AI is useful to that process or not. But ultimately, we believe that these tools can be an enabling force for our employees.
Thank you. Representative Nelson, also introduce yourself. Sorry, I came in a little bit later.
Yeah, Napoleon Nelson from the 154th Legislative District. So the last question that was asked around effectively staffing, I don't understand. I feel like you said some stuff, but I'm not sure what you said. Saving 95 minutes in a day. Help me understand how that doesn't lead you to say, you know what, I think there's an opportunity here to have on a team of 7, a team of 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I think that the goals of every team are different. There are teams that face different types of backlogs. They have different goals of what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that we saw that those folks, when they did find some of those time savings, and again, for some it was minimal, for some it was a bit more, they were really able to reinvest that time into continuing to work on the objectives and goals for their teams. Their ability, to provide value for their teams and folks, I think really that time saving translating directly into reduction, I think it really just depends on what the aims, objectives, what are the goals those teams are trying to accomplish, and does that time saving translate into them helping accomplish those pieces.
And listen, I appreciate that. That to me says that a team of 7 should be a team of 8, right? So if what you're saying is we've been understaffed and we're trying to make sure we catch up to and figure out how in the world to do the right work, I say make the team of 7 a team of 8. The reason I press this is I appreciate the principles that are established with the governor's kind of approach, but I don't think that we have the teeth that we need to, from my perspective, to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So let me ask another question: is within the principles of our Gen AI pilot, how did you guys identify data that would and would not be shared with Chad as part of an understanding of classified and important internal data as opposed to something that could be shared to make processes better?
Yeah, so in terms of the data people were using with ChatGPT, the first piece I would say is that all of our employees have different training and resources that help them navigate, how they handle any data that they're interacting with, and many of the, principles that they're already operating under apply to ChatGPT as well. Additionally, we had a enterprise agreement with OpenAI that would ensure that any prompts employees used would not be used to train OpenAI's models, and provided additional, data guarantees and protection. And then, lastly, a big piece of any kind of data use during this pilot was we asked our employees to not provide particularly sensitive data, just out of an abundance of caution. And I can provide afterwards those specific data sensitivities, but that was just to ensure that as this is a new tool, it was a pilot, that we were primarily focusing on information that still offered a lot of value, but was not as highly sensitive as potential other data sets that we have access to.
And so how are you consistently reassessing that need to understand how our data intersects and can be benefited by either an expanded or retracted utilization of chat? How are you assessing whether or not chat is the right tool and OpenAI's tool is the right one for what we're trying to do? Right. So there, I'm both very happy that we're doing this, and it has an awful lot of questions that I'm not sure we're really getting to yet. So talk more about how this board is establishing data parameters and expectations.
Yeah, so, and really appreciate the question. And to that first piece of, is ChatGPT the right tool for all of our data or all instances? We are a large organization with teams having a lot of different work, domain areas, touching different types of data. And part of our goal with this pilot from the onset was we felt that, when we go back to the end of 2023, a year ago, private and public sector organizations were still trying to navigate where, when, and how it made sense to best use these systems in their work. And we felt particularly in the public sector, there wasn't really any clear examples we could point to of different, local, state, or federal agencies that had shared what it was like to actually start to pilot. And so for us, this pilot was a limited footprint, limited in scope, but was definitely a proactive first test that we wanted to take. There's a lot from this pilot that we built on that I think will inform how we continue to test. Ultimately, we want to set any of our folks up for success. So whether it's because of the domain area they're working in, the types of data they have access to, there's a range of AI tools out there, and we want to make sure that we're enabling folks with the right tool that best sets them up for success, and they have any of the training, resources, needs to do that. What that's going to look like for every employee, I think, is part of what we want to continue to explore as we move forward, because there's definitely a range of ways to use these AI systems, and that's going to look different for different teams. But this gave us a helpful foundational starting point in terms of, for a range of our employees, what that might look like.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you. Representative Gatos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to further ask some questions based on what Representative Nelson had asked, that in terms of the data that you're pulling from, as you all know, that if there's a subset of data that is controlled, what are you doing to make sure that they're not just pulling from the wild, total internet, everything, and what you're pulling from, what the term is, hallucinations, and what are you doing to make sure that the retrieval process is within a set of data that we know is correct. And so I currently sit with Representative Mirsky on the Joint State Government Commission study on AI, and certainly we are looking at a lot of these things as well. I commend you for at least trying this with OpenAI and ChatGPT, but there's so many other tools out there, and what are you doing to make sure that the data sets that you're pulling from are exactly what you want to pull from, otherwise known, I guess, as a RAG?
Yeah, no, great question. And so I think a theme of this work for us has been, when our employees are interacting with these tools, how do we set them up for success? And I think it's important to acknowledge that also in that work, there's instances where we might proactively, suggest a tool for someone, but also AI features and technology are just more and more prevalent throughout, all the technology we interact with. An example might be how if you use any search engine these days, often kind of the first search result is a generative AI enabled search result. And so whether it's OpenAI and ChatGPT, whether it's some other product that they're interacting with, again, we want to set people up for success. And for us, part of what that looked like in this pilot was really making sure we were trying to understand what it looked like for people when they got an output from ChatGPT and how they went about auditing that output. We reinforced throughout the pilot that, this is, again, a tool helping you. You own your work product. You're responsible for what's there. And, if there are inaccuracies, that's still on you as someone who is using this as a tool in your work. Specifically, we asked people in the pilot, what types of corrections did they need to make? And people did cite that they would find hallucinations. Again, in our research with them, actually asking what were the types of issues that they saw. That was, us trying to be proactive on that. But again, I think as we look to other tools and other models, there's going to be continued opportunities to really help inform people on what types of errors or hallucinations might come for a specific, tooling set they encounter.
Thank you for that answer. And I think that if I may make a comment, is that, I think that AI is certainly a really valuable tool. It's only as strong as the users, and it certainly can bring out the worst and it can bring out the best. And our goal with AI is not to be afraid of it, but to make sure we harness it so that it brings out the best in mankind and not the worst. And that's why it's important now, I believe, not to be afraid of it, but to harness it to make sure that we do bring out the best in humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ledbetter.
Thank you, Chair Cerisi. Harrison, thank you for your testimony this morning. Fascinating and exciting to be part of this conversation and this committee. Has the department analyzed any cost to compute analysis regarding this initiative?
Not for this pilot, and then this was a fairly small footprint, and that is not something we looked at for this pilot.
Certainly, and the question is not structured to pose any sort of opposition or hostility to the initiative, as I think it's imperative for us in our advocacy and representation for the good of the Commonwealth to be aware of the new tools and resources available to introduce efficiency within government. I would just like to point out for your reference and to advocate for the record within the committee here that the cost to compute does increase when moving from NLM models to LLM models. And that cost is currently an average of 3 to 5 times when introducing a point of interaction from a natural language model to a large learning model. It can be up to 10 times going from a zero baseline with no model to a LLM, such as what you're referencing with ChatGPT. With that in mind, the reason that cost is increased is because of a disproportional increase in baseload energy necessary to power the computing function necessary to generate the results that we're seeking. And so with that in mind, I know my colleagues from my caucus as well as across the aisle have been talking about energy. We have a tremendous amount of energy here within the Commonwealth, whether that be natural gas, whether that be some of the other alternatives that have been evaluated within different factors and capacities. We would invite you to be part of that conversation, because without consistent and reliable baseload energy, we will not be able to have reliable and consistent outputs when looking to LLMs like this. And so while idyllic and certainly something that we need to embrace and anticipate, we need to make sure that when we lift the hood, we have the ability to substantiate and sustain this going forward. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for your testimony. Chairs, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rivera?
Yeah, just 2 quick things that stood out to me in your testimony. Coming from an education background and loving AI in the classroom, but also knowing its limits, you had mentioned that AI tools are not a substitute for judgment and experience that employees bring to their work. So as long as we keep it people-focused, as you said in your summary as well, we engage our workforce in a human-centered way as this technology evolves. I think the big fear is that this is going to replace people. And to Representative Nelson's point, I'd love to see us increase in human productivity because we have this tool, not decrease in human productivity. So with that as the focal point, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Do you have any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Sure, just a couple. You had talked about some of the tasks that were successful or had the greatest impact. Was there any task or anything that stuck out that was less productive and that the participants just didn't feel that it worked well with?
Yeah, great question. And, one thing that I really enjoyed about this program is we had a range of employees from different roles, backgrounds, different skill sets. And while overall a lot of folks had very positive experiences, there are definitely folks who struggled to use some of these tools. In our report, we outlined a couple different adoption barriers that folks saw, which was everything from, just kind of getting in the habit of, how do you use a new technology and tool, some of the learning curve around learning how to prompt. I think to some of the data questions before, I found that from our folks, there was a really healthy kind of skepticism in terms of people wanting to make sure that they were being secure with our Commonwealth data, and especially with everything that's discussed around, OpenAI and how it and generative AI tools at large. So yes, there was definitely a handful of different instances where folks it wasn't as successful for them, but on the whole, we felt like people were able to get that value and did enjoy using these tools.
So where do we go from here? The pilot's done. What are the plans moving forward, and are you going to keep us informed about what's going on? Because I think that between the chair and I, we very interested in this moving forward.
Yeah, so again, when we started this pilot, we felt that there wasn't any really great reference out there of what does it look like for a public sector organization to start to drive adoption with these tools and hear from their employees, what worked well, what didn't work well, how can we set folks up for success? And this playbook that we ran, I think, is what we want to continue moving forward. As it's been mentioned, there's a range of AI systems and tools out there. And there's definitely different, degrees of value to be had. Ultimately, we want to lean into a lot of what we're doing and continue this work where we're taking an employee-centered approach. We have a range of different resources, but continuing to build out communities of practice, help provide the right trainings to our employees, both on kind of some of the tactical prompting skills, but also just familiarity with some of the larger conversations around AI, and continue to find those opportunities where we can drive value with these tools. Throughout this work, a key part of this is that we want to continue in collaboration, and so part of what made this pilot, we feel really successful was, we had almost 600 feedback surveys from our employees. We did a range of feedback groups, user interviews, and we'd like to continue with that work as well to try to find, again, these instances of what does this actually look like in practice for our folks, and if there are areas it's not working as well, what can we do to address that? So this work will continue, I think, with a range of tools that best meet the needs of different teams, and this is just the starting point.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Nelson, for the second time.
Thank you. So this is largely going to be focused on how quickly things change and our ability to keep up. So when did we start the pilot?
So the first participants were using ChatGPT in the pilot in March of last year.
And how quickly have you seen both the instances of chat almost advance around you and around that pilot? And how quickly have you found the framework and structure that you created for the pilot to commence to almost be outdated?
Yeah, and let me know if I'm not hitting this correctly, but an interesting part of this work has been ChatGPT Enterprise as a product has changed a lot just in the past year. And we felt that there's a lot of foundational pieces of how we set up the pilot, which have evolved well over time. Some of the touch points we've had with employees, our ability to collect feedback, a lot of the foundational trainings that we did. But we engaged with OpenAI throughout the year. They offer different training opportunities. And we continue to make ourselves available to help, learn what didn't make sense with those changes and what we needed to support them on. Creating that feedback loop is, I think, something that we want to continue doing as we scale these tools. Overall, I would say the initial framework we had for the pilot worked well, even as the tool changed. But I think as we continue to, see these systems become capable of doing more things, just having that structure of feedback is what will allow us to be able to adapt.
And I think that's good, right? I think it is a pilot, and it's important that we all recognize and understand that. But I think the reason I ask is I want us all, and I want myself especially, to be wary of how frickin' quickly this industry is developing and advancing, and how slowly we operate in Harrisburg and state government, and God forbid, as a legislative body. So as we're thinking about this, as you think about versions 2, 3, and 4 of a pilot or an implementation within the state government, do you feel it's important to be even more specific with guidelines in the next instance, or do you think it's more important to be broader and more values-based with guidelines and how to utilize an AI tool?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and something that was definitely on our mind throughout the past year. I think the double-edged sword of this all changing so quickly is that I think there are different products, features from a range of these models and tools that have been released and then either pulled back or had to be changed because they were a lot less accurate or they weren't as effective or efficient. And I think walking that line on trying to move fast, but also not over-indexing on each new piece that comes out, because that might actually not be the type of feature or tool or technology that 6 months out is the one that is leading that category. And so I think definitely some of the more broad approach in terms of values and creating that feedback loop allows us to be nimble, but we recognize that this is changing fast and are going to continue to have our eye on the ball as this technology moves.
Representative Gatos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when we talk about the training that you did, question number one was, what was the age range of the employees that were in this pilot program?
We had a wide range of folks who are, early career through who had been here for the majority of their career. The exact range in that distribution, I don't have off the top of my head, but we can follow up with. But it was a mix of, tenured employees as well as.
It'd be very interesting to see what the adoption and adaption rates were, in those age groups. Can you also tell me, like, what was the curriculum? Maybe to get a little more granular, give me an idea of, like, what did the training course consist of from, they got there in the morning, and what did you teach them? Just, like, is there a curriculum or an outline of what that really consisted of from, hey, here's where you can access this, here's how you use it, and what's the training? Can you give me an idea about that?
Yeah, so happy to talk through, kind of some of the different strategies we took. I'll also just note, though, that, we were working with a range of employees in different roles, and there wasn't kind of a set, this many hours this day, because people are, engaging with this pilot on top of, their normal responsibilities as well. Every pilot employee had, an initial onboarding call where we would provide them some of the overviews of our policy, our approach, what we were doing with the pilot. Throughout the entire year, we had office hours every week where employees could drop in, ask questions. We'd also spotlight other employees in terms of how they were using these tools, what was working well with them. We then had a mix of more kind of tactical generative AI trainings that were either led by our team or led by OpenAI, which were kind of the more nuts and bolts of how do you use a tool like ChatGPT, how do you think about prompting, what are some of the resources. And then we also experimented with some kind of different ways to spur some of the adoption for folks. So an example of that is we found that when people get access to these tools for the first time, especially if they're not familiar, the kind of where, when, how do I use this can be a little tricky. And so we would do even sessions that were more about, problem scoping and brainstorming, and how do we identify problems and then think through solutions, and then which of those solutions might be appropriate to a, tool like ChatGPT. The last piece I'll also add is, in building that feedback loop, we would periodically ask folks, what types of resources are the trainings meeting your need? What types of questions might you have about AI generally? And would do just training sessions about kind of this AI moment at large. People would ask us questions about energy. People would ask us questions about, federal policy with AI. And we would do kind of quick hit 30, 45-minute sessions every month just to kind of help provide some of that context for folks as well. So we offered a range of approaches. We tried to make ourselves, prescriptive, but also understand that each employee are in different teams with different roles and had some different constraints there. So testing those different trainings, I think, was also one of the benefits of this pilot. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We finally got the technology to work. Again, glad with the technology committee. So this has been very informative, and it really is eye-opening as we see this emerging technology and to see that we have done a pilot program as one of the first state governments to be able to do this. As we look to move forward, are we looking to develop our own AI in Pennsylvania with our own team, not using another platform to do it? What would it look like? How long would it take? And what do you see as, and I know a lot of this was asked, but what are the greatest issues that you think that we're facing with this technology, integrating it into our government?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of our next steps and what it might look like to, leverage or deploy or build our own internal AI systems, there's a lot that's new with AI, but I would also say there's a lot that echoes a lot of how we do technology work. We have a wide range of, legal requirements or policies in terms of how we handle our data, in terms of what it looks like to properly scope or not certain technology implementations. There's things that AI can be really helpful for, but there's also a lot of existing tools that we have to deploy different types of technology solutions and services that might be more appropriate from either the value add, from a long-term cost model, sustainability, what have you. And so when we think about what it looks like to, use AI, whether internal or from a third party in the future, in some of these more kind of technical implementations, like building our own AI system, it's really going to kind of fall into some of our existing, how do we scope IT technology solutions that will be long-term the right solution for that need. There's definitely some advantages to doing, different types of work in terms of how do we either more finely tune, existing AI systems or build some of our own internal ones. The long-term, I think, kind of cost model and reliability for that is still kind of an evolving space. Definitely something that I think that we'll want to consider, but no immediate plans for that right now. And I believe you might have had a second
It was just what issues you see by using this technology. I know it came up, but what do you really see as the broader issues?
Yeah, so in my focus with how do we, help enable the Commonwealth with technology solutions that meet the needs that we're trying to solve with our agencies, I think some of the challenges we face are really what I saw in some of the barriers our employees faced with these tools. In terms of there's a mix of learning curves, that's something new, it's new technology, and what this looks like for different teams is going to vary. And I think that we just want to make sure that we're doing what we can to set our different teams and employees up for success. We have just such a range of types of teams and employees in the Commonwealth, and taking that care to do that, I think, is a challenge, but something that I think we've taken a really good step on, and doing so effectively, I think, is definitely a goal.
I'm excited by where we go with this technology. Just a personal note is one thing I don't want to see is this replace human beings front-facing for the 13 million residents of Pennsylvania. One thing that annoys me is when I call a service and it's an AI voice and it makes believe it's typing. You're not typing. I mean, you're not fooling me that you're a real person. And I think that we still need the human touch for our residents of the Commonwealth. If this helps us internally, if it helps with other systems, I'm all for it. But we still need to have that person on the other end who can talk to people and talk through the process. I know that this technology will be emerging. It's going to be part of our life. We can't stop it, and I'm looking forward to it. There was nothing AI generated in this meeting today, so this is all humans here. But I'm looking forward to where we go with this, how we go with it as this committee evolves. I'm looking at the technology and the next steps that we take with this program. So I want to thank you for being here today, and your team, and everyone that serves with us today, and our staff. And next time we will have this up quicker, so the public can watch, and our participants who couldn't be here could participate. So thank you very much, Harrison, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Anything else before we adjourn? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.